So in the last class we discussed about APIs, okay, general file APIs, and next we discussed about locking of the files, record locking, how to lock the file. Okay, so today we'll discuss about the directory file APIs. Okay. So directory file APIs in Unix or any POSIX systems are based on, okay, how the user will organize a file. Okay, so based on some structures. So here directory files are record oriented files. So directory files, record oriented files means inside the directory we will be having a number of files which will be arranged in a proper structure. Okay. Then each record will store a file name. Okay, so directory will have the name of the files, and it will be having a special number which we call it as a inode number, okay, which will be associated with the file that resides in the directory. For example, in a directory I have 100 files, then that 100 files will be having file name, and they will be having a special number, we call it as inode number. Okay, then as you already studied in commands, we use mkdir command for creating the directory. So whenever you execute mkdir command, okay, so this API or this function will be invoked. So that function we call it as mkdir, and it has two parameters. Okay, and similarly we use remove for removing the directory. We use rmdir. Okay, so this is the API. mkdir is used for creating the directory, and rmdir is used for deleting, okay, or removing the directory. Okay. Coming to the syntax or the prototype, so this is how the prototype is, and these are the two header files, and this is a prototype with the two parameters. The first one is path name, or you can tell it's the name of the directory which you want to create. Okay, and the second one is mode argument. So mode argument will specify the access permission. Okay, so when you create a directory, you have to tell what permission you are giving for the owner, group, and others. Okay, so this is assigned to the particular directory which you create. And here there is a special header file, that is this dirent.h. This is a header file which we have in Unix, and inside this header file we have a structure with the name dirent. Okay, so this is a built-in which you find in this, okay, built-in functions. These are the header functions. Okay. So opendir, it is meant for opening a directory file for read only. Okay. Returns a file handler which can use for the future reference. And similarly read dir, okay, very simple, only thing just remember the function name. You have to write it as it is because it's a built-in function. So this read dir, it will record the directory, record or read the content of the directory. And again here we will be having a directory descriptor. Okay, similar to file descriptor, here we will be having a directory descriptor. That such means it's a pointer. Okay, using that pointer you can reference to that particular directory, and you can read the files which is there inside that directory. Okay. And next one is rewind dir. So it resets the file pointer to the beginning of the directory file. So similarly, here it is like it's a pointer where it will point. It will anywhere your pointer, maybe it is in the 10th file or 100 file. So whenever you execute this function, it will make the pointer to point to the beginning of the file directory. Okay. And close dir is for closing the directory file referenced by the pointer dirf descriptor. Okay, so these are the four important functions which is there inside this header file. So this is to open the directory, this is for closing the directory, for reading the directory, and this is for moving to any point, okay, any point of the directory. So here we have an example. Okay, this is an example. Yeah, this is one more function or API for removing the directory. Okay, so for removing the directory, you need not specify any permission or mode. You need to just pass one parameter, that is the name of the directory which you want to remove. Okay, and this is a program. Okay, in this program, so these are the required header files. Okay, uh, yeah, mkdir, we are using here mkdir API or function which has two parameters. The first one is path name. Okay, it is a path name we are giving here. Okay, so in this you want to create, okay, a new directory in this path. Okay, so this is a path you want to create the new directory, or you can just specify the name of the directory. And this is the permission, the absolute permission, okay, which you have studied. So this for owner, group, and others. So 7 indicates what? 1, 1, 1. So read, write, and execute permission. So in this case, we are giving for all the three categories, we are giving all the three permissions. So all the three categories have read, write, and execute permission. So mkdir, okay, if it is possible to successfully create the directory, it will return 0. Okay, if there is any error, okay, for example, you don't have any enough uh, permission to create the directory, or you have given some wrong name, okay, wrong name of the directory. Okay, in that case, if there is any error, it returns -1. So it has two return values. On successful, it returns 0. On error, it returns -1. So you are checking whether it is the value is equal to -1. Okay. If the value is equal to -1, then we understand that there is some error. Okay. So display the error message and execute this exit failure. So this is a built-in function which is used for displaying some error message. Okay. If everything is fine, then you will be able to create a new directory in this path with this permission. So this is a simple program, okay, showing how to use mkdir API. So the next one is device file. Okay, so we have different types of files, regular files, device files, directory files. So this is device file API. So what are the functions that we have in associated with a device file? Okay. So device files are used to interface physical device with an application program. So in the Unix, okay, there is a separate folder where you can find the files which are associated with the device, okay, maybe the keyboard or the terminals. Okay, so these files are used to interface the physical device with the application programs. Okay, the process needs a super user, that is root permission, to create the device and must call mk node. So this is a function, or we call it as an API we use for creating the device files. Okay, but we need root permission for creating the device files. Okay, so this is a function we are using for creating device files. Now here there is a group ID and a user ID attributes, okay, of the device files are assigned in the same manner as that of the regular files. Okay, when you create the regular files, you'll be giving the username and group ID. Similar to that, you have to give even here the group ID and the owner ID. Okay, when the process reads or writes to a device file, okay, when you are creating a device file, you are linking the process to the particular device file, and you are trying to read or write to that device file. The kernel uses two numbers. Okay, there are two numbers which we call it as major device number and minor device numbers. Okay, so these are the two numbers which the kernel uses, okay, to select the device drivers function. Okay, so the process, if the process want to read or write the device file, in that case, it will be using, the kernel will be using these two numbers, okay, to invoke the device driver functions, okay, to perform the actual read or write data transfer. Okay, so you all know about device drivers, right? So in Windows also we have device drivers. Every device will be having a device driver, and the device drivers will be having their own functions. Okay, so whenever you want to interact with any device, we need device driver functions. Okay, to select that device driver function, we'll be using these two numbers, that is major number and minor device numbers. Unix system defines MK node API to create the device files, and this is a prototype we have. So these two are the header files we need. Okay. And this is a syntax. First we'll be writing the path name where you want to create the device file, and mode. Okay. So here mode argument specifies access permission. Okay, mode is nothing but what type of permission you are giving to owner, group, and others. Okay, and here you have to specify the device ID, that is the third parameter. Okay, so device ID will contain, here you will be writing two numbers, that is major device number and the minor device number. Okay, so this is for invoking the device driver function. So here we have an example. See here. So this is the example. So first is the path name. Okay, so this is a path of the device file which you want to create. Okay, this is the name of the device file, and these are the permissions. Okay, so here it is a permission. Here you can see the first one. It is called. Okay, so this is called as a flag. So this flag is used to indicate whether this is a character or block device file. So this will tell IFBGL BNK. So this will tell it is a block device file. Okay, so this is a flag. And again, this is for user. We are telling you for user we have read, write, and execute permission. This is for group, read, write, and execute permission, and this is for owner, even he has read, write, and execute permission. Okay, and this indicates, okay, this is major device number and minor device number. Okay, so that depends on what type of device you are device files you are creating. Okay, so you do not worry about more about in detail about the device major and minor numbers. Okay, the only thing you have to understand here is the third parameter is a device major and minor number. Okay, so if you are able to create successfully the device file, then it will return 0 or else it returns -1. Okay, so sometimes they may ask you what is a device major and minor number. Okay, so what is a major device number? The process reads from or write to a device file. The file's major device number is used to locate and know what device driver function that does actual data transfer. Okay, so this major number is mainly used for what? For invoking the device driver function. Okay, so this you have to remember. Okay, this one, three words. Okay, device driver function. So next one is minor device number. So minor device number, it will tell what are the arguments you have to pass. Okay, so different device will have different types of argument. For example, if it is a terminal, then it will have different arguments. If it is a keyboard, if it is a mouse, then it will be having different arguments that we have to pass to the device driver function. Okay, so this will tell what arguments you have to pass. So minor device number specifies arguments or the parameter to be used for the particular device type. Okay, based on the device, it will tell what arguments you have to pass. The next one is FIFO file API. So this is one more. Okay. So in the exam, they may ask you explain directory file API, explain device file API, explain P4 file APIs. Okay. So here, P4 file is also called as named files. Okay. So explain named file API. So it's nothing but it is P4 file API. So first in, first out file API. Okay. So here mainly this named file APIs, or we call it as pipe. It is used for relating the process. Okay. If you want to communicate, if there is a communication between two or more process, okay, then you will be using this API. So it is used only between related process when a common ancestor has created the pipe. Okay. So this special device file, that is pipe, okay, it is used for inter-process communication. So between two or more process, okay, there must be a communication, then we'll be using this pipe. So any process can attach to a P4 file to read or write or to perform read-write data. Okay. So data which you write to the FIFO file are stored in a fixed size buffer, okay, and are retrieved in a first in first out order. So this is very important. Okay. So whatever, if suppose assume that there are two process, okay, process A and process B, if they want to communicate, so in that case they will be using P4 file. Okay, in between they will be using P4 file, or we call it as a pipe. Okay. So what it will happen? The data, first it will, process A will write the data to a fixed size buffer. Okay. So this FIFO file will be having a buffer. Okay, which is temporary storage. Okay. And this process B will read the data. So this will write. Okay. And this will read the data. But when it reads the data, it retrieves the data in the order first in, first out. Okay. So you have studied in data structures, right? First in, first out order, FIFO order. Okay. So this is a prototype. These are the header files we need. Okay. And here there are two parameters. Okay. Similar to the previous one. Okay. Only thing is you have to remember the name of the uh, command, a function. Okay. And here, your first parameter is the path name, or the name of the file which you want to create. Okay. Path name of the FIFO file to be created, and this is a permission. Okay. Similar to the previous one. What permission? For user, group, and others. And here, this is an example. So this is the name of the FIFO file you are creating, FIFO file, and these are the permissions. Okay. So here this indicates it's a FIFO file. Okay. So this is a flag which is very important, which indicates it's a FIFO file API. And here we are giving all the three permissions for read, write, execute permission for user. Here for group we are giving only read permission, and for others also we are giving only read permission. Okay. So this is the prototype of FIFO file. Okay. So FIFO file, if it is able to create the file successfully, then it will return 0. If any error, then it will return -1. Okay. So there are few points you must know about FIFO file. When a process opens a FIFO file for reading, okay, the kernel will block the process until there is another process that opens the same file for writing. Okay. So whenever the FIFO file is opened, okay, for reading, okay, assume that there are two processes, process A and process B. Okay. So this is a FIFO file. If it is opening for reading, okay, then this kernel will block the process, okay, until there is another process that opens the same file for writing. Okay. Similarly, when the process opens the FIFO file for write, so in that case, what happens? The kernel will block the process until another process opens the same file for reading. So this is opposite. Okay. So these two sentences are opposite. So this is for reading and this is for writing. What you have to tell is, whenever any process is performing any operation on this FIFO file, the process will be blocked. Okay. So there is a synchronization between the process. Okay, between these two processes, there is a synchronization, mutual understanding between the process when it is performing read or write. Okay, if a particular process tries to read, write something to the FIFO file that is full. Okay, if suppose the FIFO file is full. Okay, in that case, the process will be blocked until another process has read the data from the FIFO to make space for the process to write. Okay, assume that this is trying to if this process is trying to write, okay, and if this is full, in that case, what will happen? So this process will be blocked until another process reads the data and makes a FIFO space in the FIFO file, and until there is a space, this process will be blocked. Okay. And similarly, if the process attempts to read the data, okay, which is an empty FIFO file, if this file is empty, the process is trying to read, then the process will be blocked until some other process writes the data into the FIFO. It's very simple. Okay. If this is empty, the process must wait until somebody writes the data, some process writes the data to the FIFO file. So empty files, no process can read. Okay. From any of the above condition, if the process does not want to get blocked, okay. So if the process here also process is getting blocked, again here, everywhere, process is getting blocked, okay, for different conditions. If the process doesn't want to get blocked, then there is a flag which we call it as O underscore non-block. So this block flag, you have to write it here. Okay. So if you write it here, then it will not get, the process does not want to get blocked, can specify this flag. Okay. If the data is not ready for read or write, then open returns -1. Okay. So instead of process getting blocked. Another method, there is one more method for creating the FIFO file. Okay. So FIFO file is also called as named pipe, which is used for inter-process communication. So this is one more way of creating the FIFO file. Okay. You can see here. So this is okay. So when you execute this, so there will be two process. Okay. So one process can read from a descriptor. So this is a descriptor like a pointer which will be given for this process for reading. Okay. One more process can write and it will be having the descriptor, this one, FT1. So here we are creating two processes. The next one is symbolic link file API. Okay. So we were talking about symbolic link files. Okay. What is the symbolic link file? So it's a kind of file similar to your device file or a directory file. It is similar to that. Okay, but it is an essential a pointer to another file. You have to remember, it is a pointer to another file. For example, okay, assume that there is a file, okay, and if when you are performing any read or write or opening the file, when you create a file, there will be a default by there will be a file descriptor or a pointer. Okay, so this default, okay, this is a default pointer which we call it as hard link. Okay, which we call it as hard link. Okay. So there will be another essential pointer, okay, which we are creating. So if you are creating one more pointer for the same file, okay, so this kind of pointer, okay, we essential pointer to another file, that is called as a symbolic link pointer. Okay. So symbolic link pointer is an indirect pointer to the file. So this pointer what you create is an indirect pointer. Okay. Unlike hard link, which is pointing directly to the inode of the file. Okay. So this is a hard link, okay, which is pointing directly to the file. But this is not a hard link, it is a soft link, okay, which will not be pointing directly to the file. Okay. So this is a symbolic link file. If the symbolic link file points to the existing file which is later deleted, okay, what happens in the case of symbolic link file? Assume that there is a file F1. Okay. Okay, now what happens is, assume that you are deleting this file. Okay, you are deleting this file. User deletes the file. Okay. Now, what happens is this hard link, okay, which we have created, okay, will be referring to the old file. Okay, assume that there is a file F1. Okay, you have deleted this file. Okay, and you have created in somewhere, assume that in somewhere D drive. Okay, this is in C drive. Okay, this D drive you have created this file with the same name F1. Okay, now what happens is, when you delete this file, this hard link, okay, it will be still pointing to the file F1 which is there in the C drive. Okay, so this hard link, it will be pointing to the file F1 which is deleted. Okay, so they will be referring to the old file. Okay. If the symbolic points to the existing file which is later deleted, the symbolic continues to the same file name even though the name no longer named any file. Okay. Now what happens is, hard link will be pointing to this old file, but what happens, this symbolic link which you have created for this file will not be pointing here, but instead it is an indirect pointer. Now it will be pointing here. Okay, so this is a file with the same name F1. This is also a file with the same name F1. Hard link will be pointing to the same file even though it is deleted. Okay, symbolic link, what it will do? It will not be pointing here, but instead it will start pointing to the new file which you have created or which you have copied here. Okay. So symbolic links are developed to get around the limitation of the hard link. So here the hard link has got certain limitations. What are the limitations? Hard link can link files across a file system. So anywhere in any drive, okay, we can have symbolic links. Okay, anywhere it's an indirect pointer. You can have for any files in the file system, you can have symbolic links. Symbolic link can link directory files. Okay, not only the normal regular files, it can also link to the directory files. Symbolic links always reference the latest version of the file to which they link. Okay, so for assume that if we are copying this F1 to one more E drive, okay, suppose if you are copying this file to the E drive, then what the symbolic will do? Symbolic link will start pointing here. Okay. So it will be pointing to the latest version of the file to which they link. Okay. So symbolic links are typically used to move a file or the entire directory hierarchically to the some other location of the system. So here, here you can see the prototype. So this is used for creating the symbolic link file, okay, with the two parameters, the name of the uh, file link, okay, original hard link, okay, and this is a symbolic link. Okay. So there are two parameters. So original path name and symbolic link path name to be created. And there is one more function, that is read link. Okay, this is the read link function, and this is used to query the path name to which the symbolic link refers. Okay, so it is used to query the path name. So this is a path name. Okay, so it is used to query this path name and get the information about this symbolic link, and that information will be stored in the temporary buffer. Okay, and you are specifying the number of bytes, the size of the buffer. There is one more function, lstat. So lstat is used for getting the information attributes, the 7 attributes of the symbolic link file. So this hard link can be broken by removal of one or more links, but symbolic links cannot be broken. This is you have to remember. Okay, hard link can be broken, but symbolic link cannot be broken. So we have an example. In the textbook you have some different examples, okay, and in the PPT you have some similar examples, okay, but simple examples you have here. So you can either refer to the text of notes example, or you can refer to the example which is there here. Okay, so whichever is comfortable, you can refer to that examples. So here write all the header files. Okay, so what we are doing here, we are creating a file. Okay, this is a file, test.file we are creating. So you can see here, create fn, okay, and give the permission. Okay, now before symbolic link, okay, we are executing ls minus l test star. So test star is, these are two files we are creating. So this is files attributes will be displayed. So system is a function which is used for displaying or executing any commands. So here I am executing ls command. Okay, so now I am using symbolic link. Okay, symbolic link function. So what are the parameters of symbolic link? First you have to specify the original. Okay, so this is the original file name, and this is the symbolic link file name. Okay, so fn is test.file and sln is test.symbolic link. So this is a symbolic link name, and this is the path name or the file name, original file name. Okay, so here in this line we are creating the symbolic link to the file. So now how many links we have? There are two links to the particular file, test.file. Okay, there are two links. One is the default link, okay, that we call it as an hard link, and there is one more link we have created, that is symbolic link. Okay, so there are two links now. Now after symbolic link, execute this. Okay, execute this, and you will be getting, okay, information, okay, about how many links the file is having. Okay, then execute unlink. So unlink is used for removing the hard link. Okay, so now when I execute unlink, okay, it will remove only the hard link, but it cannot remove the soft or symbolic link. Okay, that is what we are telling here. Hard link can be broken, but symbolic link cannot be broken. Okay, and then execute the ls minus l test. Okay, so now I'll execute this. Here. So this is my original file. Okay, this is a symbolic link I have created. Okay. So before, so I have created the file here. This will display the message before symbolic link. Okay. We are executing ls minus l test dot star. So how many? So there is only one link. Okay. So it will. So we have not created any symbolic link. Okay. So this symbolic link is not created. So it will display before ls minus l. Okay. Test dot star. It will give the information about only my original file which is having this. Okay. So you can see here this is a permission. Okay. Because we have only write permission here. This is how many links we have and what is the other attributes. Okay. Modification and user ID, group ID and all. And next, after now we are creating the symbolic link here. Okay. And now after symbolic link, now you see after symbolic link we are using executing ls minus l command. So how many links we have here? Here. How many links we are having? First is this is my original file test.file. Okay, which is having one link. Okay, one more link is created. Before that, before symbolic link, I had only one link, that is hard link. Now how many link I have? I have this one link. Okay, and this is one more link. This is our symbolic link. Okay, so there is two links here. You can see here. Count is how much? 1 and 1. It is 2. So there are two symbolic links. Okay. Now we are executing unlink. So when I execute unlink, what will happen? After executing unlink, okay, we are executing ls minus l. Which link will be deleted? This is first one is a hard link, second one is a symbolic link. You can see here the hard link will be deleted and you will be having only one link, that is symbolic link. So unlink can delete only the hard link but not the symbolic link. Okay, so this is one simple example, okay, showing the concept of symbolic link. Okay, how the symbolic links can be created. So this example you can give for symbolic link. So this completes one chapter, okay, of your third module. So moving on to the next chapter, Unix process and process controls. So this is a simple chapter. Okay. So it will be very simple since you have already studied about operating system. Okay. Little about operating system, data structure concepts and all we will be having here. So here, first topic you will be studying about environment of Unix process. Okay. In that you will be studying about introduction, a small introduction. So here, as you already studied about process, okay, the process is a program under execution, similar to the operating system. Okay, whenever you are creating any program, a process will be created, okay, which will take care of the execution of the program. And a small introduction about main function. Okay, so we start C program. Okay, every C program will be having the entry point, which we call it as a main function. So C program starts execution with the function, we call it as a main function, and this is a prototype, okay, how we write the main function with the command line argument. So this will give you the number of command line arguments. So this we already studied in C program. Okay. So this will give you the number of command line arguments you are passing, and ARVC, argument V. Okay. So it's an array of pointers to the arguments. Okay, so this will be having whatever the arguments you have entered will be stored in this array. Okay. So when a C program is executed by the kernel, so this will tell how the C program will be executed. So whenever in Unix Okay, whenever you are executing any C program, the kernel first will start a special program or a special routine function. We call it as a startup routine. So before executing this main function, the kernel will execute the special startup routine, which will be called before the main function. Before executing your C program main function, this routine will be executed, which we call it as special startup routine. Okay, the executable program file specifies this routine as a starting address for the program. So this will be the starting address for the program. Before executing any program, this routine should be executed. Now, who will execute this routine? So this is set up by the link editor. So link editor, you compilers has got different path linkers and all. So in that you will be having a link editor, okay, which when it will be invoked by the compiler. Okay, this link editor will start executing this startup routine. Okay. So the next one is process termination. How we can terminate a process. Okay, how we can kill a process. So there are 5 ways you can terminate a process. So 3 are normal termination and 2 are abnormal termination. So first one is whenever you are executing the program, when you uh, come across a written statement, okay, written of 0, okay, we will be writing written of 0, right, in C program. So whenever you come across the written of 0 written statement in the main, the process will be terminated, or else we can go for calling a function that is exit. Okay, so in the C program also we have exit function. Okay, so apart from that we can also go for these two functions. Okay, that is underscore exit or underscore capital E exit. Okay, there is one more, two more, that is calling abort. Okay, so this is one more call. You can go for abort function. Okay, abort will terminate the process, or whenever we receive any special signal. Okay, sometimes we receive some interrupt or special signal, so which will terminate the process. Okay, execution. So, so this is about exit function. Okay, this is a syntax. So we have exit, okay, underscore exit and underscore exit, capital EXT, which returns to the kernel immediately. So immediately after terminating the process, it will return to the kernel. Okay, the control will be given to the kernel. Exit, which performs a certain cleanup process before returning to the kernel. So before terminating the process, okay, so it will perform some cleanup process. Cleanup process means it will clean or it will deallocate the memory that is allotted, okay, for executing the program. Okay, so that memory will be deallocated, and then it will return the handler to the kernel, control to the kernel. Okay, so this is the prototype or the syntax we have. So we need these two header files. Okay, so you have studied in C. So exit int status. So you can write here status. Okay, either exit 1, exit 0. So here exit 0 is the same as return 0 from the main function. Either you can write exit 0 or you can use this also. This is also fine. Okay. So these two we can use for exiting or terminating the program. Okay, you can see here, this is a simple program. Okay, here we don't have any exit or return. Okay. Now this program will, if you write simply this much, it will not terminate the program. Okay, it will not terminate the process. So if you want to terminate the process, either you have to add return 0 or exit 0 somewhere. Okay, somewhere here you have to add exit 0 or return 0. Okay, so here you can see we are executing the program. Okay, so if you remember, dollar question mark is a parameter that is used for checking the exit status. Okay, so it will return uh, the positive greater than 0, okay, value if the exit is successful. So print the exit status. Okay, so it is returning the exit status 13. So the next one is at exit. So next function, okay, in a process, okay, in a process can register up to 32 functions. So for that can automatically called by the exit. So for the exit function we saw, okay, which is used for terminating the process. Okay, so this exit function can register, okay, for the a process can register up to 32 functions, okay, that automatically called by the exit. That exit can call how many functions? Maximum, okay, up to 32 functions it can call. Okay, so these functions are called as exit handlers. Okay, they are called as exit handlers, and those functions must be registered by calling at exit. Okay, we have to use this function at exit, and here inside this you have to write, okay, you can write the 32 function names. Okay, you can use any of the 32 function names. Okay, here you can write. So this is exit handler. Okay, so at exit, okay, these are called as exit handler. Okay, for example, I'll show you an example later. Okay, it returns 0 if everything is okay. Okay, if we are able to register to this any of the 32 function, it will return 0 or it will return non-zero value. This declaration says that if we pass the address of the function as an argument to the exit at exit, okay, so you can pass the address of the function. When this function is called, it is not passed any argument. Okay, if you are not passing any argument, then it is not expected to return a value. So if you are not passing any parameter or any function name here, it will not pass any or it will not return any value. Exit function calls this function in the reverse order, of registration. So I will tell you with an example. Okay, each function, that means this 32 function can be called any number of times. Okay, you can call 32 functions any number of times. So this is a program, this is a diagram figure that summarizes how C program will start the various ways to terminate the program. Okay. Here in this you can see we have a kernel. Okay, we have a kernel that is the root of the operating system, core of the operating system. We have exit function, okay, to terminate the process, terminate the execution of the program. We have some user functions, user defined function, main function, and this I already said before executing main function. This is a C startup routine, which is a built-in, okay, which need to be called by the kernel, and these are exit handler. Okay, so exit handler. Now, only way for the program to start executing by the kernel is by calling exe. You can see here there is only one entry point. Okay, only by calling this function exe, you can see we can start execution of the program. Nowhere you have top arrow mark. You can see all these are reverse arrow marks. Okay, only by calling this exe function you can start the C startup routine. Now C startup routine will in turn call the main function. Okay, and main function can call some user defined function, okay, if there is any. Okay, and only way the process voluntarily terminates is by using, okay, by it can terminate and it can return the control to the kernel. Okay, so how? By using ext or exit function. You can see here everywhere we have ext or exit function. So this is the only way we can return the control to the kernel. Okay. So this exit function can be called by the program or by the certain signals. Okay. The process can also be voluntarily, involuntarily terminated by a signal. So sometimes signals can also terminate the execution of the program. Okay. Now you can see here, whenever you are executing the first, the startup routine will start. After that, the main function will start. Okay, and if there is any user function, we can also start executing those user function at any point. At any point, we can go for exit. Okay, so we can go for exit. You can see here there is no return here. Okay, only exit means there is only exit. Okay, after exit, what will happen? Exit function will be called and control will be returned to the kernel. So after once you call exit, it will not go back. It will not go back to the main function. You don't have any arrow back arrow like this. You arrow is not there. Okay. So here also you can see exit function can call any different 32 functions. Okay, we call it as an exit handler. Okay, the exit handler can be called, and based on that it can display certain messages. Look at this program. So we have declared two functions, function declaration. One is my exit and another one is my exit 2. Okay, and what we are I mean, illustrating in this program is the concept of at exit. Okay, so this is the main program. Okay, here we said that at exit can register up to 32 functions. Okay, it can register up to 32 functions, but here we have declared only two functions. Okay, like that we can have 32 different functions. Now at exit, what is the parameter? The name of the function. So here we have given the name of the function is my exit 2. Okay, so at exit, okay, if it is successful, it returns 0. If it is not 0, if it returns -1, then it will display some error message. Okay, now like that we have three at exit function. One more is at exit with the function my exit 1. Okay, again there is one more at exit function with the my exit 1. So here we are calling function this, and here we are calling this function exit 1, and here also we are calling the function exit 1. Okay, now this is output. Okay, and this is the declaration of the function. Okay, the definition of the function definition of exit 1, and this is the definition of the function my exit 2. Okay, now see here we are calling at exit function how many times? 3 times. Correct, we are calling it 3 times. Okay, but how it will be displayed? See the output. Okay, first it will be displaying what? Main function main is done. So this is the printf statement it is displaying. Okay, and then this at exit statement will be called in the reverse order. Okay, actually we are writing this as first one, this is second one, and this is third one. Okay, but this will be called in the reverse order. That means this will be executed first, second this will be executed, and third this will be executed. So this will be executed first, second this will be executed, okay, and third this will be executed. That is what we are telling here. Okay, exit function calls a function in the reverse order of their registration. So that is what we are telling here. Now you see here. So first one, what will happen? It will display this message. My exit 1. What is there in my exit 1? File first handler. So that is will be displayed. File first handler. Okay. Next, what will happen? This one. Okay. Next is this one. So what is that? Exit 1. The exit 1 is what is there in exit 1? Again, first exit handler. And third, which one will be called? This one. Okay, that is my exit 2. What is there in my exit 2? Second exit handler. So that will be displayed here. Okay. Second exit handler. You can see how at exit function will call the function in the reverse order. Okay, it will be calling the functions in the reverse order. Okay. The first, last one will be called. Okay, then like this it will continue. Okay, so first exit 1 is having first exit handler. Second, again my exit 1, so it will be displaying first exit handler, and last will be calling this. Okay, that is second exit handler. Okay, so that is in the reverse order. So this is all for today. So answer your attendance. Naresh.